keyword research process that he goes through. We're also going to have Matthew Kay from Compound Growth Marketing and Carolyn Wilborn from ROI Revolution. We're going to kick off with a little 5-minute introduction from each of them on how they do keyword research. So over in the right-hand side of the screen, there is a Q&A section where you can type in questions. You can also upvote anybody's questions that you are interested in. After we've got the 5 minutes of how they each do keyword research, that's where the fun starts. We're going to dig into why each of them made the choices that they did and how there may be some differences between their keyword research processes and why those differences may be there. So without further ado, Casey, you're up.
All right. Good to see everybody, kind of. I mean, I see names of people I recognize. It's good to get everybody back in a room, kind of. So that's it's really good to be here. I am Casey Barnett. I currently work with the team over at Method Savvy. I've been helping to do SEO and work over there for the past 3 years, and have a background in SEO prior to that. Many of you met me through the Frontier and when we first moved here out from about 5 years ago. Wanted to go through, so I got the lucky spot of going first. So the thing here is I get to get all the low-hanging fruit out of the way and get you guys all started, and then we can get into some deeper pieces. But at Method Savvy, we use a 5-phase methodology as we go through, and 3 of those phases are what we kind of use in our keyword research. So the first one is just information gathering. We're going to go through and we're going to find understand as much as we can about whatever topic we are looking for, whatever area we're going into. Our second phase out of that is we're going to try to get some insights from that. What did we learn? What did we figure out? Where are the gaps? What are some opportunities? And then from there, our third phase is strategy. That's where we're going to go out and go, okay, how are we going to apply this? How much more do we need to dig in? And then where do we go from there? So this process really helps us at Method Savvy to not make any choices before it's time to make choices. So it's really helpful for us as we go through. So usually in understanding, the first thing I want to do is I want to understand my audience. I want to know the personas or the archetypes that we're going to use or that we're going to be speaking to within where we're going, because that's going to change the keywords that they actually use when they're typing in their questions or going after something. So I want to know who I'm actually talking to. Usually when we go through an article, 3 or 4 maybe personas, archetypes can be 1 or 2 as we kind of go through, but these really help us to define how we're going to speak to our audience and also what keywords we may go after when we're looking at the data and the information that we have. So just picking, knowing kind of which ones are we going after, who do we think the client's going to need, who do we think is going to be reading this article. Then we go down to what are some common phrases that are used within the industry that people will start with and maybe know. So then that way we can build on those for some of those longer tail keywords. We try to identify branded language. So we want to know what stuff did we make up and maybe isn't the right for the search component. So if I tell you 5 phases, it doesn't mean crap to you until I tell you what those 5 phases are. So it doesn't help me to say that. I've got to tell you what those things are. We want to know what that jargon is early on. So we try to avoid some of that unless we're trying to make that jargon something we want to have. We then get into keyword research. Easiest one to start with is Google Search Console. It's free to everybody. If you've already got it, you can actually see everything that came in, all of the impressions that are actually coming in on content for you, and whether or not people are clicking on those things. Maybe there's keyword gaps, maybe there's opportunity. Those are things that are already showing up. Can you close that keyword gap down a little bit? This is also a good place for us to look for negative keywords. Are we showing up for things we don't want to show up for? So we can actually say, okay, in these things we may want to avoid. So we pull those in. We also want to go after what keywords are showing on what pages. Again, Search Console helps us to do this. So we can actually go in and say, these pages have these keywords showing up. And we want to be careful. Are some keywords being used in multiple places? And can we clear that up a little bit by getting a longer tail keyword working a little bit further through? Then we're going to go look at our competitors. So with that, we want to jump across and we want to go find out who else is showing up ahead of us for the keywords that we're going after, the targets that we're going after. What language are they using? How do we use their language against them? Or how can we be better than they are, right? Now that we've got that first part down, we're going to go right into insights. What did we learn? What did we figure out? What can we get off of the SERP? We might want to think about head, heart, wallet conversations around our personas. Are we talking about the guy who needs to worry about the money? We're talking about somebody who feels a lot about what they're going after. So we want to work through that. We want to figure out keyword phrases. We want to go after that branded language again. making sure that if we want to talk about it because we're selling it in a way, then maybe we want to use it, but maybe we don't, right? We're also going to go through what are common keywords that everyone is already using and how can we tweak them a little bit, or how can we go after a gap, or do we just go right after the thing we want to go at head on and just try to compete within the space, right? Then finally, we get to our strategy. So we've taken all of that information in, we've kind of found these insights, and then that strategy that we go after, we start building these personas a little bit more in depth. The language we're going to use to talk to them, we're going to go a little bit deeper into our subjects that we found or where the keyword gaps are on our site. And then we're going to go through how are we utilizing all of these elements. Now, I only gave you one tool. We can use lots and lots of tools. So SEMrush is another one we use a lot of. We'll use Ahrefs to check some of our backlinks and some of the other elements of where people are coming back into us. We also have used for some competitive research, some SpyFu elements. These are all paid tools, but the easiest one is the one that's built into your website if you just add it in, which is the Search Console side. I think that's my 5 minutes. Pretty close. I got a thumbs up, so I guess I'm all right. So, all right. Who's next?
I can go. Yeah. So Matthew K. I'm an SEO at Compound Growth Marketing. I spend most of my day in the business space, software space in particular. And so, yeah, I enjoy the keyword research process immensely. I think the one thing that runs through my head as we talk about keyword research is, what our end goal is, right? There's a tendency to, I think, create or prepare a great deliverable, like a great keyword research deliverable. That's not necessarily actionable, but it looks good. And I speak to this because I've encountered it in the wild. Others work. And I think I myself am guilty of doing this at one point. And so, yeah, I think the first part of keyword research, for me at least, is laying the groundwork, and it's trying to understand the business and understand the drivers of the business, what the business is trying to accomplish. Granted, this is because I'm typically working in agency settings with clients that are attempting to do one thing and one thing only, derive more revenue from organic as a channel of acquisition. I think, if you're a blog and your play is to get as many eyeballs on content as possible, then your driver would be not necessarily the business impact of the site, but, just page views in general. So perhaps an ancillary consideration there. But the first question I always ask myself: what kind of site are we working with? Are we working with a e-commerce site, a software site with a large blog? Some other location-based site, business serving multiple areas, programmatic pages perhaps. And then after establishing that, I then start to ask myself, what data do we have available to understand the market? In some situations, you might not even have Google Search Console data. You might not have any sort of Google Analytics data or anything like that. So you're forced to do most of your work in a third-party tool like Ahrefs or SEMrush. In a perfect scenario, though, I'm provided with Google Search Console data. I can then enrich that with Ahrefs data. I can then perhaps also crosswalk Google Ads data. I found looking at Google Ads data and looking at conversion rates in Google Ads data to be just tremendously impactful. With informing what could be possible organically, and identifying all sorts of opportunities. But after assessing data, I then go into looking at does search volume exist for what we're doing? There are situations I've encountered where either the content of the site at the current juncture is woefully misaligned with what people are actually searching for, or organic search for whatever reason might not be a great lever to pull. And this I work for a company called literally Compound Growth Marketing. Growth is always top of mind, and understanding what channels are at play. And there are some conversations where the business problem that has been brought to me with the understanding that SEO might be a solution, basically refute and say, if you want to do what you want to do in this time frame, you're going to have to look to other channels. So that's one of those initial kind of groundwork pieces. Aside from that, I think Casey touched on it as well, and I also love to do this at like an early stage, but to understand what is the customer talking about, and how is the customer describing the services that the business provides versus how is the business talking about what they do and who they do it for, and all that stuff. Where can you derive those kinds of insights? Reviews, like businesses review profiles of any sort, whether that be Google My Business, Facebook reviews, or reviews on G2 Crowd or other different sources, or at a certain point, customer support threads, and looking at emails and looking at internal sources to understand what does the customer actually care about, what do they get out of that business. Those data points just are incredibly invaluable for understanding what opportunity exists out there, where is the divide, and all that good stuff. After that, I move into identifying what sort of structural gaps might exist. From a keyword standpoint, are we missing certain page types? Are there taxonomies that are missing? Do we have whole subsections of the business? And once again, talking about the business, talking to maybe a chief operating officer or some sort of a CMO or a chief growth officer that has an understanding of how the business makes money, where they're deriving revenue from, and is all of the volume going to the site, is it branded and it's just kind of happening, or do we have unbranded presence for the things that the company does? So all of that kind of leads me into content creation opportunities, whether that be generic blog content, if you will, or do we need to stand up solutions pages, product pages, something like that. And that roadmap is really the sort of guiding rails that I use to kick off an engagement with a client and figure out what sort of opportunities exist. So I think that the biggest overarching thought with all of this, and maybe I think I'm coming into time here, so my bad, but I want to provide something actionable, and I want to provide something that is informed into the business, and I want to provide something that will actually see the light of day. So I heavily bias towards delivering something that informs, these are the gaps that exist. This is the kind of stuff that we could be ranking for, and this is what we need to do. And whether that looks like, your deliverable or how you present this to a client, that's up to you. My favorite, is give me access to your developer's Trello or your team's Trello or Asana or whatever, and let's just start creating tickets and getting stuff done. That's sort of, the beauty, or the beautiful end goal, if you will. So there you go.
All right, I will jump in then. I'm Carolyn Wilborn. I'm an SEO content manager at ROI Revolution. I've been there about 5.5 years, was actually one of the first hires on the SEO team that broke out about 6 years ago at ROI. So have been there almost since the beginning. So most of my clients are e-commerce clients, and a lot of my time is spent working on category or product listing pages, whether that be category level, subcategory level. And so my approach to keyword research tends to be focused on those pages, and it really depends on whether I'm looking to do keyword research for an existing page or looking up keywords for something that does not yet exist. So really depends on where I'm starting the process there. If it's an existing page, my beginning is always going to be, what is this page already ranking for? Typically, one of our main tools is SEMrush, although we certainly use Keyword Planner, and we have a few other kind of, doing some manual searches on Google, just jumping in and seeing if I'm looking up, I think this page should be ranking for this keyword. Sometimes I'll just go plug that into Google and see how things are actually appearing. But I think a lot of what I'm going to say is going to sound very familiar from some of the other speakers, because I really like to start once I understand what the site is already ranking for, really digging into a basic understanding of the product category. What is this product? Again, what do people call it versus what does the business call it? make sure I have a thorough understanding of kind of the background of the product, what makes up the product, what are the elements. I'm going to look at the page if it exists on my client site. If it doesn't, I'm going to go look at those competitor pages. What are the words they're using? What is the language that people appear to be searching for? And then I try to put myself into that persona, into that customer. Most of my clients, as I said, are B2C, so they're selling directly to consumers. So I want to think, if I want to buy this product, what are the words I'm going to use in Google to find it? So I usually start with that as some of my seed keywords, and then I use a combination of tools. I use Keyword Planner, I use SEMrush, I use Moz, I use Keywords Everywhere. Really any tool I can get my hand on to come up with new ideas. What are the keywords? What are people looking for? I use Google Trends sometimes, especially if it's a keyword that doesn't appear to have a lot of search volume. Maybe it's a new term. Maybe it's something that I've heard a lot of people talking about, but doesn't seem to have a big history. I'll jump in there and see how it's performing. I find that is a really good tool to use as evidence to give to a client for why we should be focusing on this term. Look at how the search trends are moving recently. My goal is always to find that sweet spot between search volume and relevancy for the site. So I may not go for the highest volume keywords, even if they are mostly relevant. I want to look for those slightly longer tail, maybe slightly less often searched, but super related to exactly what this page is about. And typically, I start with a pretty big list of keywords, and depending on the different pages, or if we have a group of similar pages with related types of products, I'll start with a pretty big list. And then I will winnow that list down because I don't typically focus on just one or two keywords per page. I really want to find kind of one primary dominant keyword for that page, and then a few related secondary keywords that are going to make sense, but maybe aren't as high volume, aren't quite as relevant to the page, but still specific to what those products are. And then all of that data, once I've winnowed it down to a smaller list, I still want to save that data, because if I'm finding a ton of keyword research and a ton of search volume around terms that are very similar to products that already exist, that might be a way I can take that to the client and say, hey, do you make this other product? Is this a new page we need to break out? Do we need to be creating new copy related to these similar but not quite the same products? So I save all of that data to see if I can use it in future for future pages. Then once I've got my list of likely terms, which is probably anywhere from 8 to 10, maybe 15 keywords, I use an internal tool that our developers have created. It provides not only search volume, but what else is on the SERP. So it tells me which of these keywords have ads, which have shopping ads, which have video results, which have featured snippets, all of that kind of data. So I can kind of line up these keywords side by side to get an idea of, do I want to go after this keyword, or is the first organic result going to be so far down that page that maybe it's just not worth tackling as my primary keyword? The tool also provides some information on likely search intent for the keywords. So we're in very early stages of developing that aspect of this particular tool, and I always like to really dig into the data specifics from it so I can get an understanding of, is this really a highly informational keyword and I'm doing a highly transactional page? Is this the right keyword, or do I want to try to go for those one or two spots on page one that Google has decided for whatever reason might be transactional? So that provides me with a lot of information to really take that list of maybe, like I said, 8, 10, 12 keywords and really push that down to really the top 3 to 5 keywords that I think the page is going to have the best chance of ranking now that I know kind of what the competition is like, what else is on the SERP, and make sure I've got the right intent keywords for this type of page. Then I take that data and hope the client will take a call with me and we can have a conversation and I can convince them to create some copy for the page. And I think that wraps it about up for me.
Great.
All right. I'm gonna pop back in here real quick, and we do have some people that are also not in this actual event with the Q&A list over on the side there. So while people punch their questions in and vote on the ones that they're most interested in hearing answers to, I'm going to remind the people that are watching on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube that you can tweet your questions at SEO Meetup, and I'm monitoring that Twitter channel, and I'll get those questions added over to the list. And for this next section with the Q&A, I believe all of the speakers can also see the Q&A list. And I'm just going to sort that by upvotes. I don't know if my sorting changes your screen as well, but we will kick off with the top voted question, and I can show that on stage. There we go.
Ooh,
I love this question.
That's awesome.
I am basically going to hide myself again and let Casey, Matthew, and Carolyn address each of these questions. And then I'm just going to pop in another question on the screen periodically, and we'll roll through that. You guys can argue amongst yourselves as to who wants to answer it first.
Can I give the smartass answer here? I really want to. It's more of so the smartass answer is, if you're not competing for them, why are they beating you? So like, you're competing on the SERP, right? So it's not about competing in real life. If you want to come up in the search for the keywords you're coming up for, you're competing here. So they are competition in some way for you. It might be around your content, it might be around your keywords, but when you are being beat on the SERP, like, people know the difference between one company and another, and if it's in the right space or not, and like, they will go down. But we know everybody looks at the top 3 answers, and that's where they usually go. And if you're getting beat from those spots, even by other companies, they may decide to search again. And so, you are in competition with people that are competing for those same spaces in that same space or same keyword area or keyword phrase.
I like it. Oh, Carolyn?
And no, I was going to say that's a good answer. My clients seem to think that they should be competing one-on-one with Amazon and eBay, and I have to kind of talk them down from that of, we need to figure out what we can be ranking for, how we can compete outside of that, because you are not Amazon. And you will never be Amazon, I'm sorry to say. But so I feel like more of my clients are choosing the wrong competitors, and it's much more of a let's push you towards some people who seem to be a more direct one-on-one.
That's a great, that's all really good. I would come at this from a different angle, potentially. I would say, sometimes to me, a statement like this validates that your competitor's organic search is maybe not a really impactful channel for them. And so if there's this gap, and I identified this, I feel like I see it all the time. I'm sure a lot of other people do too, but like, these are my top 5 competitors, and like, they know that because they're in the industry, and they probably, literally get told, and they follow up to a sales lead. No, I went with XYZ. And so they know their competitors based off of that, whether it's a gut check or whether it's, their sales data. But if those competitors, organic is not even performant, it's all maybe branded, or they just have a non-existent site or a nascent site. This, to me, I've prepared numerous kind of decks or what have you to sort of validate, like, no, it's kind of like greenfield opportunity. You could be, you could really kill it, and here's why. So I think it's a fascinating discussion to have. Almost like want to go out and find a business owner or some VP growth or whatever, just like provoke this discussion just to get it.
We see this happen most often with us at on the ABM clients. that are going after, and like B2B clients that are going after a space where the individuals themselves are not really searching for this or searching for their area. So that's where your point, Matthew, of like, those are why the competitors aren't there, is because they're being approached in other ways, in other spaces, and not through search. And whether those people are searching through search to find it, you're probably right. They may or may not be correct for those, but yeah.
Cool. I love it. Is this part where Frank, go on to the next question?
Actually, I'm going to pop back in real quick for a moment because I realized that on the live feed, we're not actually showing these questions. So I'm going to read this one, and then with the rest of them, if one of you guys will read off the question. Everybody's probably figured it out, though, that's watching the feed out on the social media channels. The question is, do you ever get the question from a client, but those aren't my competitors, so why should I care? And what's your response to this? All of those are great responses to a client that doesn't realize that there's a difference between SEO competitors and marketplace competitors. All right, next question. I'm going to pop back out of here and send that over.
Cool. Frank, do you have to put the next question up? Oh, there we go. All right. So this question is, we lost it.
I think it's on the right, second one on the right.
Oh, there it is. Got it. So the question is, I'll read it out. Why do you want to know what else is on the SERP? Does this change your strategy?
I'll jump in there since I'm the one who brought it up in my keyword research discussion. So it can have an impact on my strategy. I don't know that it's always going to change it radically. Typically, when I get to the point where I'm really digging into what else is on the SERP, I have narrowed my keywords down. So I'm picking the best of good keywords at that point. And the reason I want to know what else is on the SERP is because, number one, it can give me more information about the likely intent of the search. If there are ads and shopping and all of those kinds of things, it's more likely that this is a transactional keyword, which is important for the work that I do. But if there is so much at the top of that SERP, especially on mobile, then it is going to be, you're expecting someone to scroll down 4, 5, 6 screens before they actually get into the meat of the organic results. And so if my option is I can pick a very good keyword and I'm going to appear pretty close to the top, or I can pick a slightly better keyword, but someone's going to have to scroll down 7 or 8 screens before they actually get to the results, I might go for the very good keyword instead of the slightly better keyword, because I have a better chance of actually appearing in front of eyeballs.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think the like branching thoughts out of this are like pixels from top. Mm-hmm. Like Ahrefs actually has some interesting metrics. I forget their proprietary 3-letter acronyms for like return rate or like click rate, those types of things. All of those are like, I guess those would be 3, like return rate, click rate, and pixels from top for organic. All 3 of those are good barometers at some level to ascertain, what exactly is going on in this SERP, and is this even worth, like exactly as you said, is it worth bothering? Yeah.
I like to go in and also see what's coming on the SERP, but also are there opportunities for schema and also opportunities for position 0 elements as they come through as well. So sometimes just knowing where that gap might be of what, if we're trying to become an authority in the space, we want to get into that FAQ space for some areas, and there's no FAQ around some of these questions in these areas. Schema may be able to help you to get ahead of some other people to at least get eyeballs on your site. Whether they go there after seeing it in the position 0 site, that's okay. Not all traffic is traffic we need on our site. Some of it we just want to answer questions and move on, right? And so it's okay for us to provide that. Some of that is, the exposure we talk about. But again, getting that authority also is helpful on some of the other areas as well. So the SERP allows us to see how the SERP is being utilized by the competitors as well and in the space.
Yeah, and that reminds me, kind of prompts me to think as well. I have several clients who do videos for YouTube, and so knowing what's in the SERP, knowing, hey, there's a video carousel for this particular keyword maybe that's a great idea. You should create a video around this, for the page as well. It's a great way to provide more information for my client and help them choose, potentially beneficial additional lines of content creation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think to that point, it's like parasitic rankings. So like if the SERP is dominated by like the G2 crowds of the world, and the Google's like pulling some featured snippet like list element or whatever from that page, from that listing, I then can go and say, well, maybe we should actually devote some efforts to like going into that review site and attempting to do something there. And that would give us, if that site is capturing some large portion of clicks, then let's go there. There's we can kind of keep going and going and going. It's fun. Yeah.
You mean there's more to do with SEO than just change titles and metas?
Well, come on, guys. Yeah, checklist audits. Looks like we have the next question here. I think I might have just one away. Where did it go? There it is. Cool. So this one is, in addition to Google Search Console, Ahrefs, and Google keyword data, what tools do you use for keyword research? My shortest answer would be every tool available to you. Use all of them. There you go.
No, I do the same. I multiple tools. One of my favorites is Keywords Everywhere, which does pull keyword planner data, but I find it so helpful when I just want to look up one or two keywords where I'm double checking something, or I just need like one additional keyword for a project that I'm working on. Very affordable Chrome plugin, and just you type it into Google and it tells you search volume, trend data, related keywords, all kinds of stuff. That's one of my favorites.
100%.
Yeah, I've seen some fun stuff with like exploding topics. Is another one where you can kind of go back. You got to be on the paid stuff to get a lot of that information. There's some decent things you can find from there. To seed keyword lists, I might go to Answer the Public a little bit to see what other questions might come in from some of those areas. You get very few searches without paid, but once you're paid on that side, there can be a lot of things that will spark other things within your mind to go through. And you'd already mentioned a couple, Carolyn, which was like Google Trends is a good way to do it. Just make sure you know how to read that data as it comes across. It's not 100, it's the most, right? When we go through. And then it's also going off of, I really liked your conversation there, Carolyn, about like the best tool is your customer and your client's customer in many cases. If you're trying to meet people where they're at and have the best experience, using that system is much easier. We have a client that uses like Cluedo to watch the data that comes in from their search bar and the ability to see what people are searching for within their site and whether they're able to find it or not.
On-site searches,
yeah. One of the things that's easy to do, and we like throwing it onto FAQs, even if FAQs have like 5 or 6, you put search your FAQ and it's like, oh, we don't have that question. Guess how fast it is to answer that question as we go through, but can we find more content to build off of those? Can get really simple.
Yeah, if you have access to site search data, that's a great addition. Absolutely. Just to understanding both keywords and what are people having problems finding on the site can really kind of feed into their user experience as well.
Yeah, and you can turn site search on in some easy cases within Tag Manager and Google Analytics as well without needing to go super deep. Some of the tools help a lot, though, to whittle it down if you have access to them.
Absolutely. I think my overarching thought here is, if we're going to be using all of these data sources, VLOOKUP is a beautiful thing and has allowed me to crosswalk many data sets very easily in this little thing called Google Sheets. That has been invaluable for like, let's look at GSC and let's look at Google Ads data and Ahrefs data all alongside each other, using like a page on a site or whatever as a key value pair. A lot of opportunity to crosswalk all of the data.
Matt, you're getting ready to get into Python, get into Looker, get into all the other fun stuff, right?
And nothing is ever the same. Cool.
Oh, I think this one starts with me. probably. So why do you start with client archetypes before looking at keywords? So I think, really the perspective that we had is understanding the people that are trying to come to our site helps to understand what they're asking, what they're trying to fulfill, what is actually valuable to the people coming to the site. I can say Waffleosaurus, right? That's actually like a breakfast you can have at the Creekside Cafe in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. It's wonderful, but it doesn't mean anything to anybody else. Unless you've been there and you know what it is, how does that help us to go do that? But if you wanted to find Creekside Cafe for waffles and breakfast and for Eggs Benedict and for common things that people are searching for, you need to know what those people are looking for. But if you want to have a contest about Waffleosaurus, use Waffleosaurus. You just have to know who these people are that are trying to search. So can you do that easily? Archetypes would be the top level. Personas are deeper, and you know more about them, and they're more defined. But those help to use the right language, sometimes the actual right language. So Spanish versus English versus British versus Australian English. Like knowing the actual people that are coming to your site helps you to use the right language when trying to reach them.
Absolutely. I think my short one here, all I would say is, understand how your customers are talking about what they want from you. Whether that's an archetype, whether we call it customer research, whether we call that, any other term that you want to throw at it. I think that is an important component. And to not do that would be, a huge loss.
Yeah, and I suspect many of us have had those clients who insist on using, no, this is the official name of what it is. We need to use this on the page, and explaining that's fine, that's great. We can absolutely use that, but we have to include these other keywords or nobody is ever going to find you. And I find, yeah. I know for me, sometimes, showing search volume information, showing trend information, and showing what competitors are doing to be like, this is the people you're trying to market to. You need to be using this language.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Cool. Ready for the next one.
And I think my answer then kind of goes to this question, which is, what if the keywords the company wants to use are really confusing and maybe creating a new word is better? I think to some extent, like I said, I don't know about creating a new word, but definitely choosing the word that people are actually searching for, like I mentioned, is a battle that I've had to fight. And certainly explaining what are competitors doing, what are people actually looking for, what shows up in the SERP when you search for this other, more commonly used term, and is this the competition you want to be appearing with? Has kind of been how I have tried to approach it, but I always do try to incorporate the keywords that the client is using as well.
Yeah, it takes a long time to make fetch happen, right? So you've got to, if you want to make a word become something, you have to be willing to play a really long game, but you have to equate it to other things as it goes through. So their words may be confusing. There's certainly times when brands have identical names across community. Think about your HOA. How many of those are community association? How do you differentiate all of those when they're all exactly the same, depending on which state you're in or what city you're in? So how might you differentiate on other content, other areas? Really, now you're having to go after location. You're going after some other things with that example. But creating a new word, a lot of times, I don't know if it's meant to be actually creating an actual new word, or is this actually just finding new words that fit around what you're trying to get people to equate those words with, and then be willing to work that other word into a lot of other articles, a lot of other places on your site, a lot of products, a lot of space that it needs to fill.
Yeah, I think this is also one of those helpful times where you can have the conversation, talking about what search is for, what people are doing when they're in search. they're not walking down the street looking at like outdoor advertising billboards and like, talking to friends. They're typically trying to solve a problem and find something. And so, new words don't do not really part of that conversation. Yeah, that's huge.
I think a lot of times the only new word you should be setting up likely is if your brand, your company is a new word, that's your homepage, and you're actually trying to be found for something else. And eventually your homepage for that name, that brand, that element might actually be something you want to go after. But that's the one you really want to make work, or a single product line. If you're going after a new product line, those may be places where you need to make up new words, but you've got to add in those volume searches, those other areas that are similar.
100%.
All right. Here's another one. So how do you identify breakout keywords, specifically terms that don't show any search volume, but are a part of an emerging trend? Go for it.
So yeah, I guess if identify is the topic at hand or the question at hand, I think this is where first-person data is going to be important as far as I would understand. So what does your search console look like? And that can help you identify, what's going on as far as, how are people arriving at the site? And then if the question is how to identify, very nascent or early, the competitive emerging terms, I think that that's probably maybe a Google Trends is a good data source. We also might want to be looking at other places people are talking online. So, is it a Reddit community? Is it, Twitter? Are we aggregating Twitter data? What are people like talking about in regards to a particular topic? And that might identify early emergent. Think about like I would say as an example, like maybe we're a pest control company. And there's a new blight that's affecting a certain region of the world. If we're looking in Nextdoor and we're seeing people talking about that blight, we could identify, that's a source of an emerging topic. And then I think a follow-up to that would be, are people in a lawn care Reddit community talking about this new thing in New Jersey is just terrible and it's going to that's how you can source that, those emerging early. You have to think outside of the sandbox, perhaps, is sort of what I tell myself when I'm confronted with those situations.
Yeah, I definitely use Google Trends quite a bit. We had a client who, right at the beginning of the pandemic, was selling personal protective equipment. It just happened to be part of what they sold anyway. And so a lot of it did not have a ton of search history behind it because people weren't searching for face masks and things very much before the pandemic started. And so choosing the right keywords to focus in on was very much a deep dive for us into Google Trends and related data of, okay, we know face masks are surging, but what are those other breakout terms that Google Trends can provide that might be useful to put on the site as well?
I'm going to be the bad guy here and say another good way to do it is ads. Is
Google Ads.
Go after stuff. And we try to be organic in any way we can, but also like we can push terms in front of people in certain ways by using parallel terms in other places with ads. We can start to force traffic and force our pages to be seen by paying Google to show people to the site, right? So it's interesting that these two should go hand in hand. When you have an emerging market, an emerging brand, an emerging area, we end up spending a little bit on it, a little bit or a lot on ads until we can get SEO to catch up, and then we can switch the two, and then we can go after something else with those funds. But don't forget that if it's worth spending money on, or it's worth it to your business, you should be able to invest if you can in those places, and that'll speed it up while your SEO catches up to those areas, and you can create that traffic a bit as well if it's available. So, all right. Maria had an add-on for our last question as it went through, which was, I should have specified new word for a new industry for a new technology. And that was in reference, I think, let me jump back. I can find your question
Oh,
again.
using industry specific. Yeah, I think that my high level thought here perhaps would be maybe this informs the fact that there's not necessarily transactional, like there's not a transactional opportunity. So we have to go like a little bit up. We might have to go informational. And so at that point, you have to talk about, if we're talking about a new industry for a new technology. So we have a new technology. We have to focus not on people looking for that technology and competitors to it, but what is the solution to what that new technology is solving? And so let's just go one step up. And so then that's where you get to say, like, the conversion path is not as direct, what have you, but it's still, we can still do something there. But that's the angle that we're going to have to approach that from. So.
Yeah, on our side, we go after 3 areas, which would be brand, experience, and growth acceleration. So growth acceleration is where we're trying to get transaction. Experience, and we're trying to answer questions, do things. Brand is just about getting this exact thing, new keywords, new areas, new elements in front of people that maybe they aren't there. And it is completely informational, like you said, Matthew, for that. We're not expecting to get conversions off of this. We're not expecting to get something coming out of it right away. If we do, great. But the idea is that we're trying to seed the rest of the market with what this new thing is.
Yeah, I like the point about solutions, and I think it's a great way to approach it is from what is the pain point and what is the solution to what is the benefit of this, as opposed to the term itself.
Absolutely. Cool. Next one. What do you look for on client pages and competitor pages to identify opportunities?
A lot of times I don't end up even looking at client pages. I'm looking at the data coming from the client pages. So I end up in the Google Sheets. I end up in SEMrush. I end up in SpyFu. I end up in a lot of these other areas where I'm using the aggregators to do it. I'm qualifying it through the website. But a lot of times I'm also checking the SERP itself for those competitor keywords, those competitor elements as they're coming through, and trying to actually utilize more of the data that Google is scraping to get through in a lot of cases for this. Now, getting to their page and seeing the experience that a person is having on that page that's making them popular is important to do once you've identified they're a good competitor for it. And then that part gets into the experience of that site. How is it easily navigable? Why is Google presenting something further up the page than yours if it seems like you should be competing? What are those places?
Yeah, I think by the time you get to... Oh, sorry, Carolyn.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, by the time you get to actually looking at your client's page or a competitor page, at that point you should be validating some sort of an initiative on the back of, like you said, Casey, like previous research. Yeah, it's a low.
Yeah, I think I spend a lot of time on client pages and competitor pages, and specifically what I'm looking for are gaps and opportunities. Are there things that the client makes that are not being singled out on the site? Are they not being separated in an effective way? Are there products or types of products that a competitor makes that the client could be making or should be making and isn't? And we have an opportunity there to enter into a part of the market that they haven't previously, because we can see that a main competitor appears to be having success in that area. For me, it's really, what are those content gaps? What are those keyword gaps? Are there great terms that a competitor is ranking for that the client is not? And why are they not? Is it because they don't have that product? Is it because their website is not broken out in a way that can effectively target those keywords? What are the opportunities there that they've missed?
Cool. Ready for our next one. Oh.
Highly important question.
That's a very important question. All right. Yes, that's a custom neon Lego lamp. So Lego brick, 2x4 Lego brick neon lamp. There you go. Next question.
I was one of the ones that upvoted that one, by the way. I needed to make sure I knew.
Next up, we have, do any of your work for clients who are not selling on their site? So anyone, working for a client basically who it's not necessarily, I think we've kind of touched on this, all of us at the beginning here, but maybe there's not like a business case for the site in particular. We're looking to just to be there organically. I had a friend, and his first and last name are not incredibly unique, but not super common either. I'm not sure a good way of putting that. There's like, I think we've figured out there's 47 of him in the United States. I wanted him to be number one organically for his first and last name. And so I set off on a path of like figuring out how to get him, position one organic for first name, last name. And in this situation, I think it's just a matter of, I think there's some like basically establishing credibility as that person over and above all of the other people that are, in consideration. So what does that look like? Claiming social profiles. Maybe if you're an author, that's a great step in the right direction towards building credibility as like a person or an academic. Are you published? If you are published, and you're an author, and I've done this several times, but if you're an author, your publisher probably can link to your website, and then that makes your website look very good. And similarly, politicians, can you get your political party to link to you? How can you build the authority of that personal site if you're working with someone who is looking to do that? So yeah, that's sort of my approach or my take.
There are a lot of clients that the transaction doesn't happen through the website. I think you mentioned before, Matthew, and this isn't all of them, but like pest control companies, for example, if it's a local company that's doing that, they're really driving. If they're only in one or two locations, they may not have online sales. They may not do that. They may not do online booking, but they're just trying to be available coming through a Google My Business and have a connection through there. There's opportunities to show up for anyone who wants to be found for some things. The one that will make traffic spike is like my favorite site that I ran for a very long time was Shotgun Rules. There is no reason for this site. It just tells you the rules for shotgun, for calling shotgun in the car. There's no way to make money off of it. Well, there is ways, but Google really shuts down the fact that you have the word shotgun in your name. So you can't really do a lot of advertising. You can't really go after a lot of stuff, but it's fun to do. It's something to have out there. And could something come off the back of that? Probably. But there's certainly reasons to be pushing SEO, pushing elements for sites that don't have online transactions. There's still some transactions happening, a sharing of information, a sharing of content. Maybe you're getting onto a blog or getting onto a newsletter list. There's some type of transaction usually happening on all the sites.
All of my clients are e-commerce.
Love it. Cool. Next one. All right. How about Google Discover data in Google Search Console? Do any of you use insights from there? And if so, does it influence your keyword research? So, Casey and Carolyn, hear me out on this. Google Discover, that's where like Chrome is suggesting stuff for you to read, something to that effect. Maybe it appears in other, Google like iOS app or Android app or so forth. But it's an interesting paradigm because it's not tied into willful searching. It's being presented to you, served to you. So yeah, I'm not sure I have a great amount of experience with the Google Discover data in Google Search Console in particular, but it's probably at least structurally misaligned to a lot of the work that we're doing otherwise. But there are valuable insights, I would say, if you dig into it. Maybe
I look at it for a few of my clients, but for the most part, most of them get extremely small to absolutely no Google Discover data. I have one or two who get a little bit more, but for the most part, it does not at this time provide me with a lot of useful information because it is such a small amount of data for my clients specifically.
I'll say on our side, it's not something that we've utilized to my knowledge, like at a grand scale. I think we'll look at it when it comes across, make sure there's something there that doesn't conflict with anything else. But as we are using so many other tools to get there, we have a lot of data that it may back up a lot of what we've already seen, but it hasn't been the source of truth for something new that we've seen, but it has backed up some of our thoughts before.
Absolutely.
This is all not to say don't not use it. Like we said, use every tool in your disposal to find the things that work best for you when it comes through. And there may be the client that's perfect for that.
Absolutely.
Position zero. All right. What is a position zero element? So these are elements that are built by Google where basically Google recreates the SERP for you. So it can be anything from those FAQ boxes that pop up to informational boxes that make it so you don't have to jump over to Wikipedia to get the answer before leaving the SERP. It can be the Google My Business links that are on the right-hand side with maps and elements that let you call, but there's no transaction happening with your website when that information comes out on Google, but they're using your website to fill that information in. Most of it is based off of them scraping your site, but usually through schema, where we've identified this page covers this thing, doing this thing, and you're very prescriptive about how you're telling people to do that. If you're building like a lot of people are in WordPress, there's lots of plugins that can help you to implement schema. It is complicated. It has a lot of little pieces, but you can start off really light and you can go extremely, extremely deep depending on what your site needs.
Absolutely.
Check that box.
All right, next up. Are you aware of any keyword tools that flag intent for the keyword alongside potential traffic volume? So any attempt for a tool to do this is usually going to be based off of some sort of machine learning model or some sort of algorithmic approach. I think the best that I've seen, it's a tool and almost maybe a productized service. I believe it's called keywordinsights.ai. It's Suganan. It's like a Sri Lankan last name. But it's Sugathan and Andy Chadwick, and they both run a company called Snippet Digital in the United Kingdom. The reports that I've seen come out of that tool are quite fantastic. At kind of doing this at scale. I think I've also seen, maybe Casey, like Python scripts that attempt to do this, or maybe someone. I'm trying to remember a name or anything, but it was a Google Sheets template. And I think it called into a third-party service using an API, but you could basically drag down a column and start doing classifications or flagging intent, at least at a keyword level, and then kind of aggregating, pivot tabling into groups and groupings and so forth. Keywordinsights.ai, I think that would be my number one recommendation there, personally.
I've seen it not quite here, but it can be helpful in some ways. But I've seen some also Google Chrome plugins that can come up that overlay Google when you're actually on the pages for providing data around not individual keywords, but around traffic for those sites and how much traffic is coming through. SERP stat is one that comes to mind within there. But there are lots of these tools that are out there that just can overlay search when you're there to give you what the intent was and where people are going for things. I don't think that, Jake, is exactly your question on that one, but there are ways to see where people are going based on the results as they come up.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we've tried to build something in-house that'll at least point us in the right direction. I've recently done a lot of digging into that for some of my clients and found that our tool is definitely not 100% accurate. It definitely requires a lot of manual review to determine exactly if it's what the intent really, really fundamentally is. And then you end up with a lot of cases where there is no clear intent, where, you look at those top 8 or 10 results for a keyword and half of them are super transactional pages and half of them are super informational pages. And there's a lot, it's tough because I don't think it's extremely uncommon that everything is one or the other. So I think it's always a challenge.
Yeah, I think the term coming to mind is like fractured intent, and like Google is attempting. I think they're serving content. They're like throwing stuff against a wall and seeing what clicks. So if they're going to understand that there's fractured intent behind some sort of term, you might see that the mixes of like product pages and blog content appearing in one SERP like in unison. And so like if I then say that SERP is completely driven by product, that's not necessarily a correct answer. So it's like. There's a utility to this. However, it is very easy to tiptoe into the world of misclassification and doing this at scale and doing it poorly. So it's like that context needs to be top of mind as you approach this.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Next up, can you talk about the balance of keyword research and updating existing content or creating new content?
Great question on this side. I think that we have a few clients on our side that just refuse to want to do blogs. They refuse to want to do new content updates. They want us to continue to update what they have because they want to focus on the work that they're doing. And they don't, no matter how many times we've talked to them, they may not want to get into that area of building articles, building more content, building more things. They want to stay focused on their business. So a lot of the work that we end up doing is around fixing, adding content to what they have, or adjusting as the market changes within there. I think there's been those ones out there. For every new article that you write, you should be updating up to 10 pieces of content on your site with stuff from that article or other things to get them to interlink and to come back and do that. There can be some powerful insight linking that can be done by treating all of your content, if you are creating new content, as evergreen content so that it can live forever. And then you could go back. I like to tell our clients, you want to make sure that it just because you put it in the blogs a year ago doesn't mean you can't keep updating it. Doesn't mean you can't keep making it new, making it fresh, making it live longer than where it is. Now, if you're doing news articles, maybe you can't do that. But for most of us, we're trying to inform about our product. And if our product is continuing to evolve, why can't our web pages? So keep doing that. Keep adding to your content.
Yeah, I think one of the big cautions that is always top of mind for me when I'm looking at updating existing content rather than creating new is making sure I'm not screwing over keywords that are performing well already. If we're ranking super well for a couple of keywords and the client is concerned about additional terms or additional traffic, making sure that I'm not doing anything to mess up the situation that already exists. If there are keywords ranking well, I want to know that. I want to know what's working so that if those are the right keywords and we want this page to be ranking for those keywords, that I'm not doing anything to mess that up. And then combined with that, what am I missing if I'm updating that new content? Are there keywords that maybe a year ago when we created this content, search volume was super low or really weren't trending at that point, but the world has changed in the last year, and maybe those keywords which really weren't worth focusing on then are much more common now and much more relevant to the page. So what are we missing and what do we need to add in?
I'd be along those same lines, Carolyn. I would be cautious of cannibalization of stuff that's working on other pages also.
Absolutely.
So being careful, it goes both ways. If you're trying to make it better for this page, you may break another page. Mm-hmm. So just being aware of what is best serving the organization overall. Yeah. How are video and audio content being indexed, and is there SEO for them? There is, and it's a little different. There's definitely a lot going on YouTube. YouTube's the second largest search engine in the world, right? So there is certainly pieces that go on there, but they come in from your title tags, from the content that you're actually writing up in the descriptions of the pieces that are there. From audio content, transcription has become much easier to do using AI to get you a lot of the way there. That allows you to put your transcript right into your page if you need to, off of a podcast or off of one of your videos. That also makes it accessible, which is part of this as well. So making it accessible to people who maybe don't have the ability to read or have the ability to watch a video at work or have the ability to watch something come through, transcripts can be super helpful. Those can be indexed and are very easy to index. We're probably not far off. I don't have any proof of anything other than if Google can figure out right now when I'm talking in here how to do closed captioning, there's going to be a point where we're going to be able to have all that straight through into search, and it will allow other videos to show up. There are different platforms. There are different areas that are being used for all of these, and the different technologies may have different capabilities. So just being aware of which one you're using.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I think as of right now, you've got to have text. whether it's an explainer, whether it's a transcript. And I'm with you. I love transcripts. They're easy to pull up. They're great to put in there. And I think it's important as well when you're doing that video, when you're creating that audio, to be thinking about keywords before you're creating it, making sure you're putting those keywords in the video. That's what you're talking about. You're using that language so that when you do export that transcript and publish it, it's right there with keywords already in it, ready to go. And thank you as well, Casey, for bringing up the accessibility element. I think that's key, and it's so important. Just to be a good person online, make sure that people can read your content, make sure they can access everything.
Yeah. And one of the ones that comes to mind off of that. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
If it happens to benefit SEO, it's that's nice too.
Yeah. Well, we know that Google has told us, right, even through all the interviews and everything we see with the team, that it's all about the user experience. And so when everyone is having a good experience on your site, you will do better. And if there are people who are not doing well or complaining or giving you bad reviews or doing anything like that, it can hurt. So, don't be an asshole, right? Like do the right thing whenever you can, and make it work. The other one here that I would say a lot of our clients kind of mess up, or at least when we first get them, and then we're like, we need to fix this, is stop putting text in your photos and start using actual text that can be read, right?
Definitely.
Like making titles that have title images that have all of your text in it. Yeah, it looks perfect, but if nobody can read it or Google can't read through it, we're relying on an alt tag or relying on the name of the picture, and those are not as good as if you can put the right tag on the right space.
Especially
try to avoid that.
Yeah, it's always brutal to see. It's not a client. It's never was a client, but a chocolate company that I love dearly redesigned their entire website, decided to remove product descriptions and put like photos of text, and then all the descriptive content. They just had photos of packaging and photos of it was just, and sure enough, organic in Ahrefs, just like a 75% reduction in overnight. It's terrible. What are you guys doing?
If you're helping a restaurant out there, don't take pictures of their menu and put it online. Like, type that out. Get the original file. Put that thing in there. Like, make it searchable. I want to find out where the best Chinese food is. Like, help me find what I'm looking for.
100%.
We've got a question here that has a small typographical error, but it had me tripping over it, and I didn't want to throw it up on the screen and trip up all of you guys. So, does anyone watch the trend and change their content to get noticed in the searches going on? Example, news organizations.
So in order to get into the news feed, your authority level has to be high enough to be trusted the second you publish. So if we're talking about a site with authority that's in the 80s, 90s, you're a news organization that is known for doing that, you probably can. You can affect getting your stuff into the search. For the vast majority of sites in the world, it's taking time to prove that the content you have is worth it and that new thing that you published has value. Now, not like, can we watch those? Can we see those? Yes, usually we have to be much further out in front of it than that. And if anybody's saying that they can get everybody up on the first page within the first 3 days, like, please, you're killing the rest of us. But help us all out. But there are ways when the authority is high on your site to do it. But for the vast majority of us, unless you are a news organization known for it, it's going to be really hard to adjust the SERP without paying, or you can pay for it. Go back to ads. You can always pay to be in position you want.
100%.
What is the difference between a keyword research deliverable versus something that is actionable?
I feel like this is very targeted to something I might have said, so I will speak to it. I think that the dynamic at play here is it's very, very easy to create a Google spreadsheet with keywords in the left column and then various metrics in the right column, and then maybe have a pivot table and some conditional formatting, and then put together a slide deck that looks really, really cool, and that's it. So bias towards action or bias towards something being actionable, that looks like, we could do this. We could create this content. We could optimize this. We have a structural gap here. Those are the kinds of insights that I want to get out of keyword research. Granted, I think that's the person on the other side of the table that's hiring someone like myself or Casey or Carolyn to do this kind of work. They're probably looking for action, or they're looking for something to come out of it, as opposed to, you've prepared a very beautiful document. Unfortunately, I don't think McKinsey or Bain and Company have an SEO division yet. The day that McKinsey or Bain begin offering SEO is probably the day where that becomes more important than, or making a pretty deck becomes more important than actually, doing something. So there you go.
I will just say
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say all of my keyword research deliverables have a title page that says, here's what this is, here's how I got this data, and now here's what you need to do with this data. So all of mine have a section that says, here's what you need to do.
Yeah. And I spoke on my side that we do understanding insight then strategy. The strategy part is the actionable pieces that we're going after. The insights is that deliverable of, here's everything we learned and what we think it needs. And it's usually in a pretty deck when we do it. So appreciate that. But we always make sure that's always helpful. And then, but the actionable part of that strategy coming out of it is the thing we really want to make work for the client. It also gives us this really good piece of data at the very beginning of when we started that we can go back and see that we actually made difference. And when that contract is coming back up, we go, see where we were, see where we're at. This is super helpful for us to be moved forward.
Cool.
Right.
All right, coming into the end here. How do you use sentiment analysis in your keyword research process? For example, if a term has a lot of negative sentiment, do you still target it and try to change people's perspective? I think maybe the best way of approaching this is like, if the term has a lot of potential based off of other metrics, but it happens to be quite negative, it is the thought that I need to put a page together like slandering a competitor to rank. Maybe I wouldn't want to do that, but I think like exporting out a list of keywords and then, running some surface level like sentiment analysis on it and then like excluding everything that's like negative is probably overly reductive and not something that I would want to do. So I'm not afraid of the negative terms, maybe is a better way of saying that. I don't know.
There's applying the double negative sometimes can be helpful. How to avoid colon cancer, right? How to avoid, whatever that thing may be is also, there's lots of ways to do that, but there's ways to bring that negative sentiment in, but also come at it from a different angle and provide a different solution.
Tactfully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Where to bury a body in Raleigh, or how to murder and not get caught. I don't know.
Well, I worked for a client that sold comfort products, aka cremation urns, and so I did write a significant amount of informational content for them. I'm not currently doing a lot for my clients right now, but for that client I did at the time, and so it was, how do we talk about this very delicate subject that tends to have a lot of not a ton of negative sentiment, but definitely not a happy topic that a lot of people want to talk about. And so we really focused in on pain points. So, how do I travel with an urn? How do I want to spread my dad's ashes at Walt Disney World. Can I do that? Those kinds of questions that people had, and how can we address those potentially negative elements in a positive way.
Yeah, we have a similar, not a similar client, but a similar situation. But we have a client that works with us on incontinence. And that is not something anybody really wants to talk about, but it's certainly something that many people face. But the people who are dealing with it need those things to be found. And so getting right in front of it, addressing it, being out there with it, being forward with your articles, it's the intent of your site is for that. So it's okay to go after that if that's the actual place. So don't worry about what the rest of the world thinks. It's got to be, if this is your corner of the world and that's what you're taking on, take it on and go right after it.
100%. All right.
Lots of check boxes over there.
Yeah. Following up on the video audio, are people trying to hide their content to certain circles? I think everyone has a no index section of their site. Some people will even, leave pages in their sitemap that are not intended for, for organic search, but it still happens. Specifically, though, follow up on the video audio. Yeah, I think maybe if you have, I don't know if the question is necessarily dialed into, do you have video, like text content that, if transcribed, is not necessarily something that you want to reveal? I probably want to make sure that you're editing, or at least not serving something crufty or irrelevant. Yeah, always be editing. That'd be my takeaway.
And if you do want to hide things, if you do want things to not be there, picking the service that's serving your content also can help you to do so. So if you want it to be found on YouTube, you put it on YouTube. But if you don't want it to be found on YouTube, you may find another place to put it so that it doesn't get surfaced. You can unindex things on YouTube as well. It still belongs to them, right? And you can make it so it doesn't come search, but they're still there. So just be aware, but deciding whether you want that content to come up. So I can see sales decks. I can see, some Vidyard videos where people are going in and wanting to just talk through their screen cap of whatever they're doing, where those things don't need to be found. Just being careful of how you post those and where you post those, if you don't want them to be found.
What keyword was the hardest for you to rank? I don't know.
Amazon.
Amazon, yeah.
Yeah. I can't rank for Amazon for shit. I don't really know how to get there. So yeah, that's one. I think they think they've got it covered. I don't have a good answer for this one. They've all been hard. I think a lot of the brands are the hardest. When it's a new brand, becomes the hardest one. Does it always happen? Yes, but the play on it is so long, and usually it's a nonsensical thing when we first start with it to get it to where it's going to be, depending on where we were. A challenging one that we had at Method Savvy was one called Velo, was a client that we had, and that one was very tough because they were not in bicycles. And it was trying to fight the rest of the world, and language barriers and other things became very hard to go after. So much so that it turned into we're going after a different thing instead to go after this. A lot of ABM and a lot of other practices.
Yeah, I think the biggest thought here would be, this issue or encountering this is something that informed my, let's reframe the question kind of approach, where, you certain times you realize you're like structurally probably not going to meet, like, even if you're organic position one, if that SERP is eaten up with ad units and featured snippets and a map pack and a million other things, it probably is really hard to rank for organic position one there as well. You should probably focus your efforts elsewhere. So I don't know. That's like a non-answer. That's a very politician answer to that question, perhaps. But I think that's I feel like that's something I encounter all the time.
Yeah, and I'll go back a little bit to that brand, getting your client's brand to rank. I have a client, they do a small amount of direct sales, but mostly they sell through distributors. And so they really didn't have an SEO strategy for their brand website, for the manufacturer's website. And as a result, all of their distributors are ranking at the top. And so the question then becomes, great, we can get you at the top, but it actually means you're going to sell less products, because then your distributors who are selling more products are not going to be there. So where is that balance? How hard are we going to go for that top position for your brand name if that means in the long run you might actually sell less products?
Absolutely. All day.
All right. We made it through that Q&A list. And I have a quick question to ask the audience. So I'm trying to get an idea of what people think about using this platform. And while I'm doing that, let's thank our speakers, Casey, Matthew, Carolyn. Thank you very much. This has been very informative. And we're going to pop back out to the networking area. Are you each able to take a table and answer questions one-on-one or in groups, small groups?
Sure thing.
Just up for a bit. Yeah.
So we'll just hang out for a few minutes in there. And as promised, get everybody wrapped up by about 8 o'clock this evening. And thank you very much. Let's see.
Guys.
I think we've got an icon down there for a round of applause. I was just thinking, how do we actually do a round of applause? There's the little applause button. There it is.
It's so loud in here. It's so loud.
All right. I'll see everybody over in the networking area.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.